The smell of eggs and coffee met me at the top of the stairs. Mom was already at the table. A plate waited for me, fried eggs with a precise dash of hot sauce on the side, just the way I liked it. She used to make this exact breakfast when I was in high school, before those 5 a.m. welding practice sessions. For a heartbeat, I let the old warmth trick me into thinking it was a sign. A good luck send-off. "I'm only going for 2 days," I said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Just a maintenance contract at the plant in Brookings. The new job starts Monday." She nodded, not looking up, slowly stirring her coffee. "That's great, honey." The words were automatic. A recording played from another room. Her eyes stayed fixed on her phone, screen glowing beside her plate. Even my smile didn't pull her gaze away. "I know it's not a big name like Merrick was," I pushed on, the words feeling clumsy. "But the pay is steady. Full benefits. I can start paying you back everything I still owe." A quiet mutter was her only reply. Her thumbs tapped the screen, then she turned it face down, a private gesture that shut me out completely. I looked back at my eggs. "Don't make it complicated," I told myself. She let you stay. She didn't have to. When I stood to rinse my plate, her eyes finally flicked to me. "Drive carefully." "Will do." The goodbye was a choreographed afterthought, a dry peck on the cheek, a one-armed hug that felt like we were acting for an invisible audience. Before I'd even turned toward the door, she was back to her phone. Outside, the morning sun stretched the shadows long and thin. My duffel bag, heavy with welding rods and gear, clinked as I swung it into the trunk. I tried to frame it as a beginning. As I pulled the car onto the street, I caught a flicker of movement in the front window, the curtains twitching shut. Just a small gap, but enough. I pushed down a foolish spark of hope. I came home early. The job in Brookings finished quicker than quoted, and the familiar exhaustion, the smell of hot steel and scorched rubber ground into my skin, had me dreaming of my basement bed. It was 6:32 p.m. when I turned onto our street. Then I saw the bags. Dozens of black trash bags, a ragged line of them defiling the front lawn. Some were split open, vomiting my life onto the grass: socks, sweaters, notebooks, my spotted welding gloves. My own duffel bag stood at attention, dumped and abandoned. My gaming monitor leaned drunkenly against the mailbox. My open suitcase gaped nearby. Mom held her phone steady, as if filming a tutorial. Beside her, my sister Nail had her arm extended in a perfect selfie angle, panning across the wreckage. Her voice, bright and narrative, hit me through the closed car window. "Back from another business trip," she was saying, voice dripping with sarcasm. "And she still thinks $8,000 in back rent is a suggestion. Watch closely, guys. This is entitlement in the wild." My brother, Griffin, paced the sidewalk like a restless guard. He saw me, smirked, and aimed a hard kick at the nearest bag. A cascade of my books fanned out into the wet mud. Finally, he announced to no one in particular, "The family freeloader takes out the trash." My lungs locked. The world went silent and airless. Mom raised her phone, adopting a calm, documentary host tone. "Kara Stren, 29 years old, has been living in my basement for months like a parasite. That ends today. Consider this your eviction notice. Public and permanent." A few neighbors had frozen on their porches. Old Mrs. Zweilen across the street clutched her dog's leash, her face a stony mask. Mr. Linton peered from behind a bush, his own phone raised. A silent, captive audience. I got out of the car. Slowly, I bent and picked up a binder that had spilled free, its cover bent. I straightened the metal rings, set it aside neatly, and reached for the next thing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just worked, methodically moving my shattered life from their lawn to my trunk, piece by piece, while Nail's live commentary painted me as a villain in her story. When the trunk was full, I closed it with a soft thud and turned. They were still filming, all three of them, their smiles sharp and expectant. "Enjoy the show," I said, my voice barely carrying. "You'll be hearing from me." The slam of my car door was still echoing when the front porch door banged open behind me. My father stormed down the steps, his face a thundercloud of crimson. He didn't speak. Instead, he hurled a set of keys, my old house key, the mailbox key, the little fob for the shed, directly at my head. They struck my cheekbone with a sharp, metallic slap before clattering onto the gravel drive. "Take your crap and get out," he growled, the words stripped raw. "You're not our daughter anymore. Real adults your age don't mooch off their parents." A hot sting bloomed on my face. I blinked, slowly brought my fingers up to touch the spot, then bent down. The gravel bit into my knees as I picked up each key one by one. I didn't flinch. I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me wince. He stood there, arms crossed over his chest, a statue of righteous anger waiting for the inevitable collapse, the tears, the begging, the scene. To his left, Nail had her phone perfectly angled, a director capturing the climax. Griffin paced a tight circle behind them, a grin playing on his lips like he was watching the winning touchdown. I walked to the driver's side, opened the door, and got in. The door closed with a solid, muffled thud, sealing me in silence. Through the dusty windshield, I took them in one last time. My mother, a study in cool detachment. Nail, her face alive with curated outrage. Griffin, buzzing with brutish glee. Finally, my eyes locked with my father's. He held the stare, expecting me to look away first, to cower. When I didn't, something wavered in his expression, not doubt, but a flicker of pure, uncomprehending confusion. Who is this person not following his script? I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. I pulled away from the curb slowly, my gaze forward, and I did not look back. For a long time, I just drove. The streets of my childhood, usually a map etched in memory, dissolved into a meaningless blur of houses and streetlights. Eventually, the car found its own way to the vast, empty lot of a 24-hour grocery store. I parked in a dark corner, killed the headlights, but left the engine running. My hands were locked on the steering wheel, knuckles white. There was nowhere to go. It was the glow of a porch light that finally gave me direction, Elena's apartment. My oldest friend. She must have seen my headlights or just known, because the light was on, a silent beacon in the night. Pulling into her driveway, the memory hit me like a physical blow, the envelope. It had been buried at the bottom of my document box for over a year. Thick, cream-colored paper. No return address. Just my name caressed in the shaky, beloved script of my grandfather. He'd pressed it into my hand in his hospital room, his own hands thin and papery. "Don't open it until things get real bad, kid," he'd whispered, his eyes holding a seriousness I hadn't understood. I'd never imagined a badness like this. Now, a silent scream was building in my chest. "Open it." Inside Elena's quiet living room, I set my duffel bag down. My hands were unsteady as I retrieved the envelope from its hiding place and laid it on my lap. Elena appeared, placed a steaming mug of tea on the table beside me, squeezed my shoulder once, and retreated to her bedroom without a word. She knew. I stared at the envelope for what felt like an hour, tracing the letters of my name. Finally, I slid a thumb under the flap. It gave way without resistance, as if it had been waiting, poised for this exact moment. Inside was a folded letter and a small sheaf of crisp, formal documents paper-clipped together. A business card slid out, Vincent and Dorsey, estate and realty law. The letter was in his familiar cursive. "Karist, if you're reading this, then they've done what I feared. I couldn't protect you in life, so I'm doing it now. I've deeded over part of the house, the lake cabin, and the workshop to your name. It's all legal, all filed. You don't owe them a thing. Not an apology, not your silence, not your guilt. This is for when they forget what you're worth, granddaughter." The room tilted. My vision blurred, but not with tears. A violent, electric clarity shot through me, making my fingers tremble. I fumbled through the notarized pages. A living trust. There, in black and white, next to my name, were percentages. 40% of the family home. 50% of the Cowes County Lake Cabin. 35% of the commercial building on Revered Street, the very building that housed my father's business. The air left my lungs in a rush. This wasn't a lifeline. It was a weapon my gentle grandfather had forged for me, years in advance. He had seen the ending long before I'd even understood the story. The next morning, I made the call. The secretary at Vincent and Dorsey had a voice like polished granite, offering vague, distant appointment slots. Then I said, "I'm calling about the matter for Jeremy Wren. I'm his granddaughter, Karist." The tone shifted instantly. "We can see you at 2 o'clock, Ms. Wren." The office was in an old stone building that smelled of dust and wisdom. Inside, it was all dark wood, green glass lamps, and the steady, patient tick of a grandfather clock. The walls were fortified with leather-bound legal volumes. Mr. Dorsey stood from behind a massive desk. He was older, his hair silver, but his eyes were sharp. "Karist," he said, not a question. "You used to sit right there." He gestured to a worn leather chair with him. "Always had that little red notebook, filled with sketches of gears and girders, if I recall." I nodded, a lump in my throat. He remembered. He took my grandfather's envelope and spent the next 20 minutes in utter silence, examining each document with a slow, forensic attention. The only sounds were the turning of crisp pages and the relentless tick of the clock. Finally, he looked up, his face an unreadable legal mask, but his voice left no room for doubt. "It's ironclad. The trust was executed and filed well before his passing. They cannot legally exclude you, sell, or encumber these assets without your signature. More importantly," he paused, leaning forward slightly, "if they have been collecting rental income from properties listed here, or have used them as collateral for loans without disclosing your interest, they are not only in breach of the trust, but potentially in violation of several state laws. They have serious exposure." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear now, but with a grim, focused energy. "I'm ready to proceed." A slight, professional nod. "Then let's begin." The first probe came that night, as expected. "Nail, 8:47 p.m. Hey. Hope you're not mad. That stream wasn't meant to shame you. It's just content. You know how the algorithm works." I stared at the message. Just content. My life, my humiliation, reduced to engagement metrics. I didn't reply. By morning, the barrage had intensified, 12 more texts from Nail cycling through faux concern and irritation, 2 missed calls from Mom that left no voicemail, and a message from Griffin. His voice, dripping with condescending calm, "You're overreacting. It wasn't that serious. You know how she gets. Just come back and talk like an adult." Adult. The word was a spark to tinder. I took a screenshot of every message, saved the voicemail, and forwarded the entire digital pile to Mr. Dorsey with a single line, "As discussed." Just after noon, the source of the storm finally called. "Dad, 1:14 p.m. A text, no salutation. We need you to sign some papers." No drama, just paperwork. It was the tone that cut deepest. The same flat, impatient command he'd use for a negligent employee. No acknowledgement of the bags, the keys, the public exile. Just another task for me to complete for the family corporation. This time, I didn't respond at all. Mr. Dorsey did. Within the hour, a formal, CC'd email landed in all our inboxes, stating that all future communications regarding the trust or any related matters must be directed through his office. I switched off my read receipts and let the new lawyer-mandated silence thicken around me. Back in Elena's guest room, I unpacked. She had cleared a shelf. I filled it with the survivors of my library, maybe a third of what I'd owned, but each book now felt weighted with meaning. I folded my salvaged clothes into neat stacks. I set up my damaged monitor, tracing the dent in its plastic frame with my thumb. Then I found a blank notebook and a pen. I hadn't kept a journal since I was a teenager. The first line came unbidden, scrawled across the pristine page. They only listened when I stopped explaining. It was like breaking a seal. Words began to flow, not the hot, chaotic rage I felt, but cold, clear observations. I wrote about the rehearsed attachment in my mother's eyes at breakfast, the performative glee on Nail's face, the casual ownership in Griffin's kick. I described the specific shade of my father's fury, a color I now realized was always just beneath the surface. I was cataloging evidence for my own sanity. On the bed beside me, my phone continued to shudder, a persistent, angry insect. Nail's notifications piled up. Griffin sent a follow-up. "Seriously? Giving us the silent treatment now? Real mature. Another from my father, just a question mark. I picked up the phone, turned it over so the screen faced the quilt, and pressed down until the vibrations were just a dull murmur in the stuffing. They were so loud. They had always used volume to drown out everything else, doubt, guilt, my voice. But for the first time, my silence wasn't submission. It was a wall. And it spoke in a language their shouts could not penetrate. Mr. Dorsey's call came 2 days later. His voice was a dry, calm contrast to the storm he described. "We've completed the preliminary review of the income records," he began. "Your parents and your brother Griffin have been collecting rent from both the Cowes County Lake Cabin and the Revered Street Commercial Unit for the past 36 months. No portion of those funds was ever disclosed or dispersed to you, the partial owner." I closed my eyes, leaning against Elena's kitchen wall. "How much?" "The gross total exceeds $50,000. Your share, based on your ownership percentages, is a significant sum. Legally, it was never accounted for. He used the term like a scalpel, exposing the lie beneath the bureaucratic word. This was no oversight. It was theft, polished and quiet. "I understand," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. By close of business, a storm of certified mail was unleashed. Formal letters detailing the debt, my legal shares, and a demand for immediate accounting landed on the desk of my family's lawyer. Simultaneously, Mr. Dorsey placed discreet calls to the lending officers at the banks that held the mortgages on the commercial property. A simple, professional inquiry: had all necessary signatures from all vested owners been obtained for recent loan applications? The implication was a silent bomb, ticking. The silence from their side that followed was palpable, but its quality had changed. The previous quiet had been scornful, expectant of my capitulation. This new silence was different, tense, wary, calculating. The ground had shifted beneath them. 3 days later, Griffin made his move. It was a quiet Tuesday at the machine shop. I just clocked out for lunch, the smell of cutting oil and hot metals still on my clothes, when I saw him. He was leaning against the driver's side of my car in the back lot, arms crossed, phone conspicuously in his hand. He looked like he owned the space. I didn't break stride, walking directly toward him as if he were a lamppost. "Karist," he called, his tone an imitation of casual ease that rang utterly false. "Got a minute?" I stopped a few feet away, my fist tightening around my key fob, the metal teeth pressing into my palm. "You're on private property. Leave." He stepped directly into my path, his pleasant facade dissolving. "We need to talk. You're tearing this family apart over a technicality. That money was never yours. You want to play these legal games?" His voice dropped, low and venomous. "Fine. But it won't end the way you think." I held his gaze, refusing to blink. "Step away from my car." A couple of my coworkers, Mike and Jenna, emerged from the side door. "Karist, everything okay?" Mike called over. Griffin's head snapped toward them. He assessed the audience, his jaw working. He took a half step back, muttering a curse I couldn't quite hear. "I won't ask again," I said, pulling out my own phone. "This is harassment. You need to leave now or I call security and then the police." He backed up another step, his eyes promising retribution. "This isn't over." "It is for you today," I said, my thumb hovering over the dial screen. He turned and stalked away, shoulders hunched with rage. I waited until his car screeched out of the lot before I moved. Back inside, I went straight to HR and filed a detailed incident report. I then emailed the security office, requesting the parking lot camera footage for that time frame. Before my lunch break was over, I had the video file. I sent it to Mr. Dorsey with a 2-line summary. His reply was swift, acknowledged, documented. This constitutes intimidation and will be added to the file. They have chosen to escalate. Our course remains unchanged. Proceeding as planned. He had made the first physical move. The chessboard was no longer abstract. They were on the attack, but for the first time, I wasn't just a target. I was fortified. Let them learn what it meant to siege a prepared position. They arrived as a committee just after sunset on Thursday. The knock wasn't a request, it was a demand, sharp and rapid fire. Then came the murmur of multiple voices, a low, contentious hum outside my apartment door. I didn't open it. I pulled up the live feed from the peephole camera on my phone. All four of them, arrayed like a delegation. My mother, clutching a tissue she wasn't using, her face a mask of strained concern. My father, arms locked across his chest, jaw a hard line of impatience. Griffin slouched against the wall, oozing contempt for the whole process. And Nail, slightly apart, her attention divided between the door and her phone screen, a producer surveying a set. "Karist?" My mother's voice was a tremulous performance through the wood. "Please, honey. Open up. We just want to talk." Things got out of hand. My father shouldered forward. "Open the door. Enough of this. You're acting like a child." From the back, Griffin's muttered commentary was just an angry buzz. Nail didn't even glance up, her thumbs flying. I let the silence swell. I wanted them to marinate in the awkwardness, in the failure of their dramatic entrance. I wanted them to hear their own breathing in the empty hallway. My father knocked again, 3 hard, percussive blows. "We're your family. You can't just ghost us over some goddamn papers." I spoke then, my voice clear, measured, and loud enough to be picked up by the door's camera mic. "All further communication must go through Mr. Dorsey's office. You have been formally notified." A heavy pause. They hadn't expected an answer, only surrender. My mother's voice climbed, thin and wheedling. "You don't have to be so cold. We can fix this, just us. No lawyers. We'll take the video down, we'll make it right." On the screen, I saw Nail's eyes flick from her phone to the door's peephole, a quick, assessing glance, before she subtly shifted her phone behind her back. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here to capture my reaction, the tears, the rage, the breakdown. More content. "I will not discuss anything without my legal counsel present," I stated, each word a block of ice. "If you do not leave this property immediately, I will call building security and file a report for trespass and harassment." My father's face darkened to a furious purple. "So that's it? You hide behind some lawyer?" "You stated I was not your daughter," I replied, the memory of the keys stinging my cheek anew. "Were those just papers too?" Griffin looked away, scowling at the ceiling. Nail began typing furiously. My mother brought the tissue to her dry eyes, a gesture now utterly empty of meaning. They stood there, a tableau of frustrated power, for one long, silent minute. Then, without another word, they turned and retreated down the hall, their footsteps echoing with defeat. The second they were gone, I threw the deadbolt and engaged the chain. My heart wasn't racing with fear, it was pounding with a fierce, steady rhythm. I opened my laptop. An email from Mr. Dorsey waited, its subject line, "First Draft Settlement Agreement. For review." Their formal offer arrived 2 days later. Their lawyer proposed a resolution I would receive full, sole title to the lake cabin. In exchange, I would sign a full release, forever surrendering any claim to the $50,000 in back rent and all future income from the lucrative commercial building. Mr. Dorsey read me the letter over the phone, his tone devoid of inflection. "They're offering you the asset with the lowest monetary value and the highest sentimental potential. It is a classic tactic. They're betting you will accept a symbolic home in exchange for letting them keep the real money and avoid admitting fault. The cabin is worth maybe a third of what they owe," I said, the calculation cold and clear in my mind. "Approximately," he confirmed. "My recommendation is to decline and reiterate our original position." They're testing your resolve. "They think I'm bargaining for a place to go," I said, understanding dawning. "They're not offering an apology, they're offering a bribe to stay quiet." "Decline." "I have already drafted the response," he said, and I could hear the faintest trace of approval in his voice. The next morning, I sat in his office again. "I don't just want my money," I told him, my hands flat on his desk. "I want structure. A legally binding payment plan for every cent of the back rent. A neutral, third-party property manager to collect and distribute all future income from all the properties. And I want a written, signed statement from all 4 of them acknowledging the misappropriation of funds. Not a vague misunderstanding. An acknowledgement." He watched me, his keen eyes missing nothing. "That is a demand for accountability, not just settlement. It is often the hardest thing to get. I know, I said. That's why it's non-negotiable. I want it in writing. He gave a single, decisive nod. Then that is precisely what we shall demand. The stalemate became a silent war of attrition, and the foundation of their world began to fissure. The consequences, once abstract legal concepts, became painfully personal. Neil's digital empire was first to crumble. A former classmate recognized my face in the infamous eviction stream and didn't stay silent. They reposted the clip with context. Here's Karist Wren, top of our welding program, working since she was 16. This is her entitled crime, living at home while saving for school. The algorithm, so fickle, turned. Her comments flooded with questions, not support. She lost over 5,000 followers in a week. 2 sponsorship deals evaporated with terse, professional emails. The eviction video vanished from her page, but the digital scar remained. The internet never forgets, and neither did the people now looking at her differently. My father's business, built on reputation, bled in a quieter, more devastating way. A long-term client, shown the clip by a curious employee, quietly pulled out of a pending contract, citing shifting priorities. Then the bank flagged his application for a business line of credit. Routine due diligence, they said. A check of the property deeds revealed the living trust and my undisclosed ownership stake. Questions were asked for which he had no good answers. The facade of total control was cracked. The communication from my family shifted from a barrage to a drip, then to a strained silence. My mother's text stopped entirely. Griffin fired off one furious, rambling email to Mr. Dorsey, accusing me of extortion. Mr. Dorsey forwarded it to me with no subject line and no comment, the ultimate professional dismissal. Neil called my phone twice from unknown numbers. I let it ring. When their lawyer's next correspondence finally landed in Mr. Dorsey's inbox, the tone was stripped of all aggression. It was the language of pragmatism, edged with cold surrender. They agreed. To everything. The structured repayment plan for the full back rent. The appointment of an independent property management firm to handle all income and distributions. And the written acknowledgement of the financial misconduct to be signed by all 4 parties. I read the final settlement document twice, sitting at the small table in my new apartment. The language was dry and legalistic, but the admission was there, buried in clauses and subsections. They had put it in writing. Before adding my signature, I took a pen. On the line above my name, I wrote in clear, unwavering script. Truth, not betrayal. This is what happens when the performance ends. I scanned and sent it back. The legal machinery would now clank into its final phase. But the true finale was theirs to stage. The apartment was tiny. A single bedroom, floors that sloped, a kitchen window that sang a mournful tune in the night wind. But the lease had only my name on it. The first month's rent had been paid with money earned by my own hands, still calloused from the new welding gig. The silence here was mine. The space was mine. No conditional welcomes, no surveillance. 2 days after I moved the last box, the envelope came. Not from a lawyer, but from my parents' address. Inside was the first restitution check. The amount correct to the cent paper clipped to it was a slip of notebook paper, my mother's looping handwriting. We hope we can put this behind us and be a family again. Love, Mom. I held the note, feeling nothing but a profound, hollow calm. It wasn't an apology. It was an amnesia request. A hope that we could all pretend the bags, the keys, the camera lights had never happened. That I would forget the cost of this fragile, rented piece. I deposited the check. I did not reply. That night, unpacking the final box, I found my old external hard drive. For comfort more than anything, I plugged it in. I clicked through folders, old homework, forgotten photos, tax documents, until I found one labeled for Karist. Inside was a single video file, grandpa_message.mov. My breath caught. I double-clicked. His face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, but his eyes the same steady blue. He was in his den at the lake cabin. He smiled, a little sad, infinitely kind. Hey, kiddo. If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. But I want you to remember something. You're going to be okay. even if they never say sorry. Some folks only value you when they can use you. And when you stop letting them, they call it betrayal. He leaned closer to the camera, his gaze piercing through time. Let them. Just stay yourself. The video ended. The room was quiet, but no longer empty. His voice seemed to hang in the air, a shield against the old ghosts. There was no more shouting to drown out, no more hostile silence to endure. There was just this, his love, echoing in a space that was truly mine. I saved the file to my laptop, backed it up to the cloud, and carefully placed the hard drive in a drawer. Not hidden away, but kept close. A foundation finally laid on solid ground.